Hi, everyone. This is Raquel.
Hi, and this is Jennifer.
Welcome to Madness Cafe.
This is a feminist podcast where we talk about women's issues, politics, and health and wellness.
And where those issues intersect. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Madness Cafe. We have a repeat visitor with us today. Yay! Yay!
Hey.
We are joined again by Christina Reynolds from Emily's List. And if y'all remember, Christina was on our episode 156, which aired on June 20th, where Christina talked about Emily's List. And so just a little bit of a refresher about Christina. She is the Senior Vice President of Communications and Content of Emily's List. And she joined Emily's List after nearly two decades of experience as a communications and research strategist. So that's awesome. So that's just a little refresher. Today, Christina is here to talk to us about this lovely book, Run to Win, Lessons in Leadership for Women Changing the World, which she co-wrote with Stephanie Schriock, who is the president of Emily's List. And I just want to, I'm sorry, Christina, I'm going to give you a chance to say hi in a second, but I just want to read a little blurb from the front part of the jacket of the book. It says here, Run to Win is a playbook for women changing the world in any arena, organized around the steps that Emily's List uses to coach its candidates from deciding to run all the way to celebrating victory. This book is full of essential lessons for any woman striving to make a difference. Christina Reynolds, welcome back to Madness Cafe.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I am excited to be here. I am, as we all are, nervous and anxious and full of all the
feels
joy and all the anxiety. But very excited to be here and always excited to talk about the book. It was fun to write. You may notice that the foreword was written by a lady who was a we were pretty excited and very grateful that Kamala Harris agreed to do the foreword for our book. So that was pretty great because she knows a little something about changing the world.
Something.
That.
Before we talk about all that, I want to see your shirt that you're wearing, and I also want to, and I also want to talk a little bit about you were at the polls today.
I was, yes. So I live in Battleground, North Carolina, which I'm here to tell you we are going to win. Knock on the wood as I say it, but
all the wood,
right?
Yeah.
You know, a lot has changed since the last time we all talked.
Yeah.
I am very excited by what's happening in North Carolina. I think we have a lot of things happening at once, and we're seeing this in a lot of battleground states. I know we're seeing it in Georgia. We are seeing when the vice president took over the ticket, it shifted a lot of things. It changed a lot of things. I think it opened up a lot of people to being a little more excited about this election, to seeing a little more hope and joy in this election. And one of the interesting things that I think we're seeing right now is, and I say this as a lifelong bleeding heart liberal Democrat, the vice president is also reaching out across the aisle. She is reaching out. And, you know, at a point when Donald Trump is making this case that there is an enemy within, and that's PS anyone who doesn't support him, right? And making this incredibly divisive case, the vice president is pointing out that she wants to be a president for all Americans. And I think she's laid out an agenda that's a really great agenda. We've seen her a lot here in North Carolina. It's very exciting. She knows this is a battleground state. We have, I believe we broke records our first 2 days. I think our first day. I'm not sure we're keeping, you know, we're doing as well as Georgia in terms of breaking every day. But yeah, I went to work the poll. I am trying to help where I can and to do things where I can. I'm actually headed to Michigan next weekend to knock some for some Emily's List candidates. But I went and worked the polls for the early vote in my home county of Durham, and it was great. It was not as busy, I will say. I was at a different location. When I voted yesterday, I stood in line for an hour to early, which was
wow.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
So and was happy to do it as the whole crowd seemed to be. I think people are excited to vote. I mean, by the way, I sound like Pollyanna when I say this, but truly, we should be celebrating more people voting. It's a good
Mm-hmm.
thing that people believe in democracy, believe their vote matters. We know their vote matters.
Mm-hmm.
It would have only taken 2 more votes per precinct for Hillary Clinton to win Michigan in 2016.
Oh
2
God.
Wow.
votes a precinct is nothing, right? I tell the story of, and it's a true thing in Virginia. Right after I had started at Emily's List, we were working in Virginia. The Republicans controlled the legislature, and we wanted to flip the legislature, and we came within one seat of tying the legislature. And I will say, the House of Delegates, rather. And credit to the Virginia Dems, they got a lot of stuff through even without this happening. But if they had won one more seat, they would have tied and they would have shared control. And what's important about that is the last seat, the seat that could have made the difference, ended in a tie. And I'm not kidding. They counted the ballots a number of times. They kept coming down. It was a dead on tie. And so
Wow.
in the rules, and what they did was they literally pulled a name out of a hat. And the name they pulled was the Republican name.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
I just want you to think about that. And that woman went on, thank goodness, came back, ran again when Democrats took the legislature. She was there. She won. Her name's Shelley Simons. She's terrific. But that I think about that all the time when you think about it.
mhm.
One more person, that one person. So for anyone, and listen, I worked for Al Gore, 500, 600 votes in Florida, and George Bush wouldn't have been president. Like, I think
Mhm.
people often think their vote doesn't matter, and it absolutely does. And so for people to come out to understand that this is going to be close, and I often think, how can it be close? But
Yeah.
Don't we
we're the
all?
qualified
Mhm.
woman, right? And this
Yeah.
guy, and I will not go blue.
Bonehead.
But it is going to be close. And so, wherever you are, please come out and vote all the way down the ballot. But yes, so I was working the polls tonight. Thank you. You all allowed me to reschedule a little bit so that I could talk to voters and make sure they had the whole Democratic
You were doing
it
important work. It's okay.
was good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Raquel, you had mentioned that you voted, and what happened on the first day of voting in Georgia?
We tripled our record from first day of early voting from the last presidential election.
Next
So
stop, Georgia.
yeah,
That would
Georgia,
be the next
show up.
There you go.
Yeah.
So
And we continue to. And I think I heard maybe it was earlier today that the first 4 days of early voting, I think it was something like 1.5 million people voted.
it's amazing.
Crazy. That is so amazing. That is so amazing. And
Yep.
I just need to just jump in here for just one quick second because Christina, you talked about how people are like, oh, my vote doesn't matter, blah, blah, blah. I'm just not going to vote. Da, da. Okay. I mean, I've always told people you got to vote. Okay. You just got to vote. It's, that right could get taken away. Just vote. But what I try to tell people now is if our votes didn't matter, then why would people be trying, or not people, some Republicans, why would they be trying so hard to take our votes away and to make it so hard for us to vote if our votes didn't matter?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. That's right.
Well said, my friend. Well
Yep.
said.
Your vote is worth something. You know
Yes.
that because people are trying to take it from you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So let's talk about this book here, Run
Oh,
to Win.
yes.
How did you get involved and become a co-writer of this book?
I started at Emily's List in late 2017, and I was there during this amazing cycle. And I think we talked in the last time about this exponential growth. And in 2018 a lot of people called it sort of the second year of the woman. And
Mm-hmm.
we rejected that a little bit because we're like, we get more than a year, thank you. As one of my colleagues would say in response to people would say it was a pink wave, and we would say it's not a wave, it's a sea change, right? We are
Yeah.
to stay. And Stephanie Schriock, who was the president of Emily's List at the time, said to me, we need to write this down. Like, this is quite a story. We're seeing changes in the way women run and the type of women that run and the volume of women that run. And we need to capture it. And in the process of talking that through and working with an agent and then an editor, we realized that it's not just telling that story, but also reminding women that the lessons that we teach at Emily's List, that we tell our candidates, apply to everyone.
Mhm.
One of the examples that really brought it home for me was Stephanie used to talk about, she'd started as a fundraiser, and she would talk about how and I will say, I've never gone into fundraising. I'm not good at it. Like, I always admire the people who do it because I have a hard time asking for money. And she said, the hardest thing isn't the ask, it's the not undermining yourself after the ask. And she said, what I always tell people is, you make the ask, and then I want you to do one of two things: count to 7 or take a big drink of water. Because our instinct is to say, here's what I want, but that's not, and when she said it, I thought, oh, in every job negotiation, I have done this. Well, here's what I want. But I mean, money's not gonna be a problem. I really want this job, whatever, we can work it out.
Mhm.
You undermine yourself.
Mhm.
I said
Mhm.
women do that and men don't do it very much.
Yeah.
And so just the act of taking a drink of water or of counting to 7, of stopping yourself from undermining yourself,
Mhm.
you get an answer. You get instead of pushing back on yourself, you
Yeah.
get someone to either say, yep, okay, or here's what I can do, or whatever. And I thought, well, that when she was telling me about it, she was telling me about it in fundraising. And then we talked about how that's true of people doing job negotiations, right? It's true of all
Mhm.
sorts of things where we negotiate against ourselves. And we talked about how that was, women did it when men didn't, and how these lessons really apply to anyone who wants to play a leadership role. Stephanie talked about having worked with candidates and how so much of what she had taught the candidates, applied to her as a leader in a nonprofit organization and a political
Mhm.
organization, right? That it
Mhm.
wasn't just running for office, but that all of these things, including, and it's one of the biggest lessons that Stephanie really felt very strongly, was that a loss is just a part of the journey, right?
Yeah.
That that's something that we all need to know. We get this idea that, okay, if we've lost them, that is cut off to us, right? That path is done. And it's like,
Mhm.
maybe there's another path that's better for you, or maybe you just need to go at the path a different way, or you need to try again, or you need to, you know, I'm sure we've all heard the phrase of have the unearned confidence of a mediocre white man, right?
Yeah.
You know,
I-
Yeah.
I've actually burned that candle in my house. My
I
kids
mean,
got me that scent.
yeah, there's a little, it smells like smugness, right? Little something to that, that we could all use in our lives as we're trying to make a difference. And when we were working on this, it was 2019, we were still really in the throes of the resistance, right? Of women being the ones who are standing up to Donald Trump, of women
Mhm.
being the ones who are driving so much change, who are leading big orgs, who are doing a lot of that work. And so we thought, well, I mean, it was Stephanie's brilliant idea, and really, it's her stories. I just helped her, put that, and I put that into light. And I did a little research to back it up. I'm a former researcher, so one of my favorite stats in there was that, and it's still true, there were more episodes of Grey's Anatomy than women elected to Congress in the history. Yeah, yeah. That's sort of how it came about and how we decided to do it. And it was a fascinating process. Publishing is interesting. You all talk to a lot of writers, I know.
Mhm.
And publishing is interesting and challenging. I wouldn't recommend putting out a book in between a political book in between an insurrection and an impeachment. It's a tough time, and during COVID, but we learned a lot. We got to talk to a lot of just hearing Stephanie's stories and knowing and trying to tie that back to the history of Emily's List was really a great and interesting experience. And I hope getting to tell some of the stories of that amazing class of women in 2018 was also just a really great thing. I still get excited when I see some of those women that got elected in 2018 on TV, and they're old pros now, right? They've been doing it and they've been, getting amazing work done. But it still makes me happy to see these women who'd never run for office before and took their first step into Congress and are just crushing it. So yeah.
That's awesome. I just want to, well, two things. In the acknowledgments, I just want to, highlight something that you wrote in here, that this book was really the culmination of a lifelong dream. I love that for you. I really do. Uh,
Me-
Obviously, politics and women in politics are things that you are very passionate about. And this
yeah.
was a dream fulfilled for you. And I think that's fantastic. And I don't want that to get, just passed
I so
by.
appreciate that. I mean, I was a kid when I was a little kid and people said, "What do you want to be?" I would say a writer. That's,
Uh,
I loved I mean, I missed the days when, Pizza Hut would give you pizza for reading, right? Like
Yeah.
my mom used to joke that one of my greatest days was the library when I was at a certain age. You could only get 6 kids books out, but once you moved to young adult, it was unlimited. And the day when I found that out, my mom's like, "Your eyes got so big," and you went back into the stacks to get more books. Um, I have always been a reader. I have loved writing.
Clearly, if anyone can see
Yeah, yeah,
behind
that's
you,
right.
all the
That's right.
books.
Um, and I have loved writing. And so to be able to get to work with Stephanie on this, to be able to tell this story of this amazing time, it really was the culmination of all my interests and something that I've always wanted to do. So yeah, it was really, really exciting.
That's awesome. Okay, and then my second part was, so you brought up how after Donald Trump was elected, that so many women came forward and were like, "Okay, I'm putting my hat in the ring. I'm jumping in. I'm doing this." Maybe it's too soon to tell yet, but do you, well, have you seen already, and do you foresee that Kamala Harris's run for president is going to have a similar, albeit much happier, hopefully, effect?
Well, I mean, I think it's a little early to tell because, she wasn't even at the top of the ticket, right? Like
Right, yeah,
headlines had passed before she was
yeah,
even at the top of the ticket. But what I will say is I I have always believed, and I think Emily's was believes the more women that run, the better it is for all women who run,
Mm.
right? And all women who might want to run. I think what we've seen, and what I would argue is, especially since 2018, but what we've seen since, Hillary ran, and a lot of women ran because of Hillary, and then the Trump thing happened, and then, there was that. Dobbs, unfortunately, had a,
mhm,
have a number of, we have a number of OBGYNs running for, which is
nice.
Thank God. I hope
Mhm,
so.
what if we had people in Congress who understood that?
Right.
We have a number of women running because of their IVF story, their abortion story, their, anything like that. We're seeing a number of things drive women out, but I certainly think that this idea, I think when she gets elected, again, knock on
Woo,
all the wood,
woo,
right?
woo.
Um, for one, we will never have to question again, will America elect a woman? Now,
That's
I would
right.
argue that
That's right.
question has been asked and answered, right?
mhm,
Answered.
mhm.
Hillary Clinton got several million more votes. Millions more Americans voted for her. I would tell you that in the years since, we have elected women in red states and blue states and purple states and all the districts and all the thing, right? Like, yes, America is ready to elect a woman, and I know because we have. But
Mhm.
that is
America is
that
ready.
glass ceiling we have not cracked yet. And so when we crack it, then we can stop asking, right? Then we
Mhm.
can just
Mhm.
say, "Yep, there we go." And what I think it does is it takes that away, and so
Mhm.
we can hopefully do a better job of judging women on the same standards, right?
Yeah,
Of giving them equal footing because we know they can crush it when they get that equal footing, right? We know they
absolutely.
um and it gives, I would be so excited for a world where people coming up never have to question, can a woman run, right?
Yep.
Can a woman win? I think, we talked last time about some of the challenges that women face, and those challenges have not gone away. Disinformation, misinformation, still very real and
Mhm,
very damaging to women in particular. We see sexism in a lot of things. Their accomplishments are questioned, more than men. They have to show their work. They have to be both likable and experienced. Men can be one or the other, right? All of those things remain true. And I don't think they're much like racism was not solved because Barack Obama got elected. Those
mhm,
things are not going to go away. But what will happen is that the establishment, so to speak. And so Emily's List will still exist and we will still do the work we're doing and all those things. But hopefully the establishment, so to speak, will not question ever again. Can this woman, like, what about this woman? When we say electable, we will look at Black women and say they are electable because we just elected one. We will look at Asian women and we will look at women in general and say, yep, they are electable, right? We just did it. Great.
mhm,
Let's keep doing it. That's, I think, what we're going to see from the vice president, and from when she becomes the president. But I think we're going to see it just from the run too,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
She's crushing it. I
Oh
mean,
my
she
God.
has had to do this crazy, unprecedented thing, run an entire presidential campaign in 13 weeks, and she has killed it. And
Yeah,
And
so,
she has.
look at that, and it's like, wowza, look what women can do. Look what
I
this,
know.
you know?
It's just so inspiring because it speaks to how she will run the country. It is so inspiring.
That's right.
Mhm.
That's
Okay, so I'm a woman running for whatever. Why do I need this book?
right. I think what it goes through is some of the steps. I mean, the first thing that it goes through some of the steps that you need to know that apply both for running for office and just for being a leader in general. But it goes through some of the things that you need to do. The prepping, but not too much prepping, right? The building your kitchen cabinet, that like, and having your support system. The idea and some of the tough truths, right? This is not a system that was made for us. It was
Right.
literally made for wealthy old white men. And much of those, we're working on it, but not everything has changed. And so, what does that mean that that system wasn't made for us? How do we get around that? And hopefully, it gives you the confidence to know that you can. I think the other thing that the book does is point to ways in which women have knocked down those barriers and gives you some examples of how you can do it too.
Mm, I love that. When I was reading this, I was wondering what response have you gotten from women who've read the book and they're like, "Oh, okay. Huh." You know what I mean? Like what
Yeah.
are you hearing from women who are reading the book and how is it affecting them?
I think the thing that I've probably heard the most is this idea. One of the things that Stephanie talked about all the time, I'm sure she still talks about it, is the idea that there's not a secret playbook, that, it's not like the guy who's running knows more than you. He just decided to do it anyway. And
Mhm,
the idea that you should prepare, you should be prepared, but that you're never going to be as prepared as you want to be. And don't let that get in your way. And I think there's something to that that gives people the permission structure to learn a little as they go, to get better as they go. It's the most powerful lesson that I took from talking to Stephanie and writing the book. Was she talked about how she often would tell candidates, save a recording of one of the first speeches you give, and at the end of the election, I want you to watch and I want you to realize how much you've grown, because you don't know it when you're in the throes of it. It just feels like, oh, I'm just doing this and I'm doing my best and I'm working my hardest and who knows if it matters. But when you actually watch and you realize, oh, I am, so much better. I know what I'm doing now. Something that again, men don't stop and ask themselves if they're doing, am I doing this right? Am I doing this well? And women let themselves be stopped by that question. And that's the thing that I think I've probably heard the most.
Mm,
So one of the parts I really liked about the book was, but it probably applies to men if they're trying to run too, but I really think it applies to women asking themselves the tough questions. What motivates me? Why do I want to run? What do I have to offer as a candidate? Am I ready? But also reading that maybe women ask themselves that a little bit too much.
mhm.
Is this fight winnable? And will I do the work required?
Yeah.
Can you speak a little to why are those the important and tough questions?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we find is pretty much all of the women that we talk to when they're running for office, it's because they want to make something better. It's because they have identified a problem and they want to address it. They're not running because it's the next step to get them to the step after that.
To the White House.
Right? Yes. And I'm not saying that there aren't women who think about that for sure. We should be ambitious, and there are ambitious women, certainly, but they are much, we hear Kamala Harris talk about this, right? Why did
Mhm,
she first run, and want to be DA? Because of her childhood friend who had been sexually assaulted, right? That she wanted to stand up for women and girls like her. And so, one, you need to think about that because campaigns are hard. And on the days when things are hard, you need to think about what's driving you, what gets you through. I think about that every day. I love my job, but on days when it's tough, I think, okay, that's because too many women are running, right? And for the listeners, you didn't see me make air quotes there, but like, what a great problem to have. If I'm busy because a lot of women are running for office, that's pretty awesome. But sometimes you have to remind yourself of that, right? So that's number one. The am I ready is a question that again, I do think we women treat a little differently. One of the things that we work with our candidates is there are real reasons not to run for office, for sure.
mhm,
There are women, and we've worked with them where it's like this is not the right time because my child is this age, or I have this issue, or I have a sick parent or whatever. And there are times when women say no and I can't do it, and maybe I'll come back to you. And they do, and they run later, and so on. And there are times when those are things that are conquerable, right? That you can figure out. It's one of the things Emily's List does, but it's what we urge people to do is think very hard about what are the things standing in your way, and are there ways that you can get help? Do you have a partner who can help, deal with things? Do you have that support system that can help with things? Is this always going to be your life? And so now is as good a time as any to try and figure it out. But that is the sort of thing that we really want people to think about hard before they get in. Again, on the days when it gets hard, to remind yourself, okay, I knew this was coming and it's going to be a tough day and I'm going to get through it. And here's how. And to think about that, there's never a perfect time. There's never a perfect time to do anything, right?
mhm,
Anything hard. There's just not a perfect time. And so that's one of the things that we want people to do is not get in your own way on that and really think about what does it mean when I want to run? What are the obstacles? And then how do I get through it? Because that's the thing. I think people see an obstacle and think, I'm not sure I can get through that. Women often do that. And men see an obstacle and just assume it won't be a problem. Yeah, there are hard things. Sure. In the words of Glennon Doyle, right? We can do hard things, right? Well, Elizabeth Warren said that during one of her campaigns. Yeah, it's okay. You do hard things every day. So, is this something you can add to the list? Possibly. Is this something that you can do and help others like you? And maybe it gets better if you win, and maybe, so on and so forth. That's something to think about. I mean, that's fundamentally one of the stories we tell in the book is Lauren Underwood.
mhm,
Right, is the youngest Black woman ever elected to the House, won in a district that many thought was not winnable. And the reason she ran was because she has a pre-existing condition and she sat in a town hall after Trump won, and her congressman said, I will not vote against, like, I'm not sure about Obamacare, blah, 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 but I will ensure that we keep that protection for people who have pre-existing conditions. And then he went into Congress and he voted against it. And Lauren said, okay, then I'm going to take your seat, right? Then I'm going to protect
Mhm.
people like me. And she has worked on the Momnibus, which is a big package of bills to, to help moms and particularly to deal with the Black maternal health crisis, which PS was not getting any attention until a lot of these, Black women got elected
Mhm.
and raised it. And she's shown that sometimes you solve your own problems, right? Get in there and make the change. Lucy McBath is another great example of this, who turned her tragedy into the work, into the trying to make it better for everyone. And there's obviously still work to do on both fronts, but that's the sort of thing that we're hoping people realize is hard things don't have to stop you. They are something to think about and plan for, right? We're all good at planning, so plan for it.
Yeah.
And I hear you talking about the candidates and their stories, which is another part of the book where you outline that it is important to tell a story. What if a candidate doesn't think they have one?
Everyone has a
Ooh,
story.
good
That's
question.
one of the things. Yeah, it's a great question because I think some people think, well, I don't have a tragedy, right? I just mentioned Lucy McBath, and if you know Lucy, you know her story. Her son was killed in a horrible sort of random. He was in a car that was playing music, and someone decided to shoot into it, which is terrible.
Because the
Um,
music was too loud.
Music was too loud, and Lucy at a gas station, and
Mhm.
Lucy was an activist for a long time and then decided to run for office. That is it's a terrible and moving story. Lauren's story is she has a pre-existing condition. Lots of us do, right? We all have stories because there is something driving you to want to run for office, right? And so whether that story is I am not running for office, but part of mine might be I grew up in a Marine house, and my dad was a Marine, my mom was a teacher. I saw how both of those were phenomenal public servants that still needed better things from their government, right?
Big
Uh,
time.
yeah, I also saw the differences in different parts of this country when I moved around a lot and saw
Mhm.
that, like, I lived in Southern California and boy, I went to a great school and there were all these opportunities. And I moved to some places where the schools didn't have the same resources. And so how do we make that better? There are all sorts of things that make us who we are and that make our story. And it doesn't have to be big and dramatic to be a story. You just have to tell your why. It's why are you running? Why do you want to or in the case of just women who want to lead, think about why do I do this, right? Why do I
Mhm.
want to do this work? Why do you all do this podcast? What are the stories you're trying to tell? Why is it important to you to tell those stories? I mean, we all have a story. And it's one of the important things that we learned in 2018 was it doesn't have to be big and dramatic. Chrissy Houlihan is an example. She's a congresswoman in Pennsylvania. She literally replied to a $3 fundraising email, attached her resume and said, "I think I might want to run for office. What do you think?" And then someone from Emily's List reached out. Chrissy, she's a veteran. She was a small businesswoman. Her daughter is gay. And when Trump won, she thought my daughter could end up with fewer rights than she has right now. And I don't
Totally.
think it's okay. Right? She thought about all the things and all the communities that she valued and all of the people in her community that she valued and worried about their rights. And that's why she ran. It's not a big dramatic story, but it's a powerful story
Mhm.
because it's her why, right? So yeah, I think it's really important that people understand you don't have to have a tragedy. You don't even have to have a like I triumphed over this thing. No, you're living your life. You're in your community and you're there and you're running because you care about something. Tell the story of what you care about.
Yeah. In the book, you guys also talk about as far as why you're running and what your story is. You guys also talk about knowing what your vulnerabilities are,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And when I first read that, and I mean, I like, put a big star next to it and everything. My initial reaction to it was know what your vulnerabilities are so that you can kind of like steel yourself against any attacks to it. But now, hearing you talk, Christina, I'm thinking know your vulnerabilities so that you can show that those vulnerabilities aren't going to hold you back or hold
Right.
back anybody else who may have similar issues.
Yeah. I think it's a both and.
Mhm,
I think you're absolutely right. I think, there are a great example of this was someone who did this very well in 2018, Stacey Abrams. I'm an old opposition researcher. That's where
mhm,
I started in campaigns. I did a lot of rapid response. And one of the things that we know is you need to know everything that somebody could find about you so you can be ready, right?
mhm.
We all have some, I mean, in these days of I'm glad I'm old enough that there were not digital cameras and things like that.
Yep,
Um,
Me
right?
too.
absolutely.
Don't need my kids seeing that
That's
stuff.
right, that's right. We all have something. We paid a tax bill late. We didn't vote in every election. We had a bankruptcy. We had a whatever. We lost a job. We did, whatever. We all have something. We, posted something unfortunate on social media, et cetera, et cetera. Know what it is so that you can be ready and think through and not be responding to something blindly, but know
Mhm,
what's out there and all of that. But the other thing is, many of those things you know, are probably what make you a more would make you a more effective leader.
mm,
And the best example I can think of this is Stacey Abrams. Republicans were about to go after her for the idea that she had a lot of debt.
mm,
And so she wrote an op-ed, and I think it was Fortune or Forbes or something like that, about the debt that she had. And it was because she went to expensive schools. She's got a law degree. She's, all of that. She has student loans. She helped her parents buy a house. She bought a house. And she said, yeah, I'm like almost every Georgian, right? That I
mhm,
have debt. And I don't think it makes me, not only does it not make me unqualified to be governor, it makes me qualified to understand what people are going through better than someone who's never faced those,
And it
yep,
totally does. It totally
right?
mhm,
does.
That's right. And that's an example of, knowing her vulnerabilities, knowing something that might be coming at her and saying, I'm going to remind people that this is part of what makes me ready to do this. This is part of what makes me good at doing this.
mhm.
Are there some skeletons in the closet that perhaps once you're laying out your vulnerabilities that would be, oh, maybe I shouldn't run?
I will tell you that right now, I'm a pretty big believer that there are no more silver bullets. Again, Donald Trump is president.
Well, that's true.
Was
Yep,
president. I I I think that it's less that there's something that is totally disqualifying and more that it's something that you should think about. Will there be an impact on my family? Like if this were
ah,
made public, will there be an impact on my family? And if so, how do I deal with that? Right. Because I will tell you, having worked for a lot of different people in politics and worked with a lot of different candidates, the spouses, the kids often take it harder than the candidates,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
mhm,
Because you don't want to see the person you love drag through something, and they're not. Hopefully, any decision to run is a family decision, but they're not the ones who, at the end of the day, made that final call. So, do I think? I think there are times. I think what you should think about is what could come out and will
mhm,
my how will that impact the people that I love or the people involved or whatever, and that's a personal decision, but I think these days, if you're ready for something, I mean, I don't know, we've had a lot of stuff happen with elected officials, you
We
know
mhm.
have, we have, we have, but
you know,
Indeed.
as George W. Bush said in a much, much quieter time, I think, when I was young and irresponsible, I was young and irresponsible, right? Like he once used that as an excuse, but it's kind of true. And
Yeah,
so, can you talk about how you turn that on its head? Can you talk about how you made something better? Can you talk about what you learned from it? Think about those things. But I think I'm not sure how many things are disqualifying these days.
mm, yeah, good point. One thing that I think is really great about the book, and I want to make sure that we don't lose sight of it, is that the lessons in the book really do apply to women who are trying or wanting to take on any sort of leadership role, or even just the next step in their career or the next step in whatever organization that they belong to. It's these are things to think about so that you don't hold yourself back from taking that next step, or at least putting yourself in play for that next step.
Mm-hmm.
That was the goal when we were writing it, and I got in hindsight, calling it Run to Win might have, might have thrown people off, but that was certainly the goal because they are bigger lessons,
Mhm,
the idea. I mean, we talked about, for example, asking for money when you're doing salary negotiations, but even things like thinking through the next step, even things like the idea that a loss is just, a step in your path and not the end of the road. Even things like preparing for your next steps, all of those, the steps that you take when you're running for office are really steps that are good to take just in life, that are good to think about. And it's also, I don't know about you all, I go through this and I probably both am this person and I respond to other people who are other girlfriends of mine who are being this person, but I hear amazing, qualified, brilliant women talk themselves down. I hear people question just because they get spoken over at a meeting or they get left, they get ignored or they things like that, and they let it impact them. I mean, we hear this, and I think I talked about it in the book that when you look at if a job has 10 requirements, that
mhm.
men will apply with far fewer than 10. And women feel like, no, I've got to have like the full, I've got to.
10
Or
plus
or
2 more.
yeah, exactly, I was gonna say, we need 12, or we
Right,
think we need 12, yeah.
Yep.
that's right. Um, and we shouldn't be doing that, we know that the Barbara Lee Family Foundation has done a lot of great research. I may have talked about this last time on the podcast about how women have to be both qualified and likable.
Mhm,
And we know that voters still tend to demand that, but I think the more we go out there and recognize that we are both, even if we don't think it, that we sell that, that we tell the world in the ways that those mediocre white guys do, and the non-mediocre ones, but
There's a few of them.
there's some of them. Well,
Yep.
we've all sat in a meeting with someone who had an unearned confidence, right? And said
mhm.
something very clearly that they didn't really, and to find out later they were bluffing, they didn't really know it. They just said it as fact. Um, you know more than you think you do, right? Like
Mhm.
you should be saying things with confidence. Your life experience gives you the ability to do that if you take it.
It's funny that you say that. I literally just thought of this, that and I think it was a man who told me this, that when you're saying something, is whether it's in a meeting or, whatever, but when you're saying something, be cognizant of how you're saying it.
Mhm.
Because when you say it with confidence, or you take down the emotion in what you're saying,
Yeah.
people will hear it better, or they
Yes.
will be more open to hearing it.
Or be cognizant of your emotions. Sometimes
Uh-huh.
emotion can be a good thing, right? But be thoughtful of it. Be thoughtful of your language. I had a
Mhm.
boss once who called me out and I didn't realize I did it, but I had a verbal tick that I would end statements with sort of. Um, And he said, "Do you not believe, like, I know you believe in what you're saying, and you
Mhm.
undermine it. You make this great point, and then you undermine it when you just fall back on sort of, or do you think, or, things like that." And I hadn't noticed that I was doing it, but once I now call it out on other women because I hear it and I'm like, "Oh no, you think that? I know you believe this very strong. I know
Yep.
know it because you have the experience and you've done the work and blah, blah, blah. And you are undermining yourself. And so making sure, there's a lot that we can do to give ourselves the confidence, to give ourselves, or even if it's just to give ourselves the knowledge that their confidence is just based on confidence, right? It's not, that there's not the tendency to think I have to know absolutely everything about this before I can say anything, right? If
Yeah,
social media has proven anything, we know that, right?
exactly.
You don't have to know everything. You should know something, but there's a difference there, and I hope that that's one of the things that people can take from the book is to learn that that's not you don't have to live that way,
Totally. I have two favorite parts of the book that I wanted to talk about. Because we're kind of running out of time, I want to stick them in there real quick so the readers and listeners get to hear about it. Number one, I really liked the discussion about Nancy Pelosi, about how she leads with integrity and by building relationships. I really didn't know that about her. And so I would encourage anybody to read the book just to hear about those stories. And the second
Can I
piece,
tell you, I didn't know that either. That Stephanie was the one who taught me that, and it's a fascinating. Nancy Pelosi is a fascinating story,
Hmm.
all. But when you look at all that got done when she was the speaker, and when you look at who was the person really putting Trump in his place, more than
mhm, I
while
have a newfound respect for her. Not that I didn't respect her before, just a newfound respect.
Hmm.
And also, I really love on page 294, you all wrote campaign joyfully, show gratitude deliberately, celebrate liberally. And I thought, yes, this is the joyfulness of women running for positions, but also why did you all think that was important?
this was all Stephanie, and I have to say I am guilty of what she talked about, and she was prescient, right? Now that we hear Kamala Harris campaigning with joy,
Yeah.
she said, "What happens is we work with these women, they get elected, they do all the hard work, and then they turn immediately to, okay, my office has to be, we have to do this to get my office up and running, and we have to do this on day one and get this done." And she said, sometimes I just had to say to them, stop. You did a big thing. Go and celebrate it for at least a day, right? Like go and take that beat and make sure that you are acknowledging. And I think a piece of it is not just celebrating for yourself, but celebrating for other people. We don't need to, as I always heard in Sunday school, right? You don't need to hide your light under a bushel, right?
Yeah.
Women need to take credit for work that they've done, for victories that they've had. We need to call it out and encourage other women to do the same.
Yes.
Hear it all
Yes.
the time. And I think especially for women of my age, where you'll hear, well, I didn't really love how that person went and took credit. And it's like, stop. You don't mind it when a man does it because
That's
Hmm.
right.
we're accustomed
Yep.
to that. And so we all need to like, whatever, you go, stop. Stop yourself and step back and say, if that was a man, nope, then good on her. Good on her for taking credit. Good on her for going out and saying, I did this and I'm proud of it. Because
Hmm.
that gives other women the permission structure to do the same, right? That gives other women the knowledge that they can do it. It is part of the reason when we don't do that, that women have a harder time seeing themselves in leadership roles. Yes, let's make a big deal. Let's celebrate liberally. I mean, I think it's something that we all need reminders of. But I think it's something, and I think we're all better at celebrating other people. So great, celebrate your girlfriends, right? And make them do it. But let's stop being uncomfortable with saying, I did this and it was a good thing, right? I worked hard and it paid off.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good on her. Good
Yeah.
Yep.
on, good on
Good on
her.
Kamala.
Good on
Kamala.
her.
Woo,
Sure.
woo,
There
woo,
we
woo.
go.
Yeah.
Gonna be great. And we're gonna celebrate on November, whatever day this race gets called.
I dream that it won't be like last time and it'll be a landslide and we won't have to wait and wait and wait. We're just going to be watching those tickers go. It's going to be blue
Mm-hmm.
state. Oh, another blue state. Oh, some more blue, blue, blue,
Mm-hmm.
blue.
Oh, and look, that red state is now a blue state. Oh, look,
State.
yay!
Her lips. Here's hoping. Here's hoping.
Landslide, landslide.
Yep. Yep. Oh, this seriously, this book is so, it's a really good resource. You know, I mean, not only does it demystify what it means to run for something, for some office, whether it's school board or president, it gives you a view inside that, but it also gives you lessons, as it says in the title, lessons to take in and to absorb, to take that next step. You know, it's like a pep talk.
That literally was the goal. I'm glad that that came through. That was a lot of Stephanie's role as president of Emily's List. She got a lot of stuff done, but she also gave a lot of pep talks, and that's what she wanted to come out in the book. So I'm glad, and I hope it serves as a resource for people. I think those lessons still apply, and I hope that people will be able to take them and run for more offices.
Y'all should give these out to all of the women who come forth and are they're like, hey, I think I'm gonna run, or I'm thinking about it. Just go, hey, read this.
Go.
Was there anything you wanted to say about the book that we didn't have the time? Because there's a lot in there that we didn't even have time to touch.
No, I think we covered the big stuff. I'm glad you ended where you did because it is one of my favorite parts, and I am guilty right now of being in the oh God, what's gonna happen phase, and it's a good reminder that we are hopefully heading into the celebrate liberally phase. So yeah.
I think we celebrate no matter what, but we celebrate this opportunity. We celebrate the fact that we're here, the fact that things change so rapidly,
Mhm.
and we just celebrate. And I just really believe she's gonna win. I really
Mhm.
believe. Good on her.
Good on
Yeah.
her. Good on
Yeah.
her.
Good on you guys for
Yeah.
writing this. Good on you for helping.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you all so much for lifting up things like this and lifting up the women that you do. I really, really appreciate it and always love talking to you.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Write another
Same.
one so I can come back.
Yeah,
Our
absolutely.
pleasure. Anytime. Anytime you are
Anytime.
always welcome.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Awesome.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Christina.
Ready to recap, my friend?
Yeah. Yeah. So you talked about one of your favorite parts in the book about celebrating liberally and showing gratitude and all that.
Yeah.
I I really love that. And it really is a great reminder for all of us. I mean, like Christina said, that we don't have to be humble. And as Kamala Harris said, as my dear friend Kamala Harris said, not all women are interested in being humble, nor should they be. You accomplish something, let people know about it. Be proud of it. You put the work in. Be proud.
This has been such a joyous campaign.
Mm-hmm.
It has been so
Yes.
joyous, which leads me to believe that when President Harris wins,
Yes.
that we can return to some kind of joyous country.
Yes.
One in which we
Yes.
celebrate, one in which we celebrate each other, one in which we say, good on her, good on him. Let's
Yeah.
celebrate the men and the women. I'm excited about this. Let's
Right. And work together, right? Like with Nancy Pelosi reaching across the aisle and getting shit done.
heck
And
yeah.
Kamala Harris, you know, she's got all these people that she's bringing into the, you know, under the tent, you know, Republicans for Harris, white dudes for Harris, black women for Harris, all these people, come on in. And she's literally giving us, you know, a glimpse of how she will run the country.
joy. She's given us joy, and we freaking
I love
need
it.
joy and pleasure and celebration. And this is, in my opinion, the running of the country by the feminine,
Mm-hmm.
which is also strong. She will
Mm-hmm.
stand tall and beautiful and forceful, but with joy and pleasure.
Yeah.
It is time to break that glass ceiling.
Yeah, more women need to be in positions of leadership. I mean, literally across the board. I mean, it's yes, president, absolutely, but other organizations too. Like, how many organizations do we belong to where there's only ever been a man running the organization and there's really no reason why?
Every organization I've ever worked for.
Right, exactly. And
right. I mean, come on.
yeah, and it even says in the conclusion on page 319, and of course I had to highlight it and star it and do all the things, but they write, true change will happen in the world when women and men stand together as equals in equal numbers, making decisions for our future, or maybe better yet, when women outnumber men. Yes!
Yeah. Yeah.
There you go. The power of the feminine.
Read
Right
the book.
here. Yes. So good. So good. I'm glad we talked about this. I love it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you, Raquel. Thanks, listeners.
Bye, y'all. Thanks, everyone, for listening today. We will be back with more Madness Cafe next week. You can find us on Instagram at Madness Cafe Podcast or email us at madnesscafepodcast@gmail.com. Bye.